This is the Emergency Communications Training Net. My name is Jerry and my call sign is B4EMC. I'm located in Waxhaw, North Carolina, and I'll be the net control operator for this evening's net. The purpose of this net is to train on emergency communication procedures, communications equipment, communication modes, and the National Incident Management System, which is known by NIMS. That's November, India, Mike, Sierra. This net is also being broadcast by YouTube, so we want to welcome the YouTube group this evening that has checked in to listen to the net. Okay, before we get started, is there any emergency communications traffic or announcements? If so, call WB4EMC or Net Control. Okay, this is WB4EMC. I want to welcome everyone to check on into the net this evening. We'd like to welcome W4 Oscar Papa Sierra, Mike down in Florida. Also, we'd like to welcome WX4ACO, Dave, up there in Crossmore, North Carolina. And also, we'd like to recognize KD9er, Juliet Delta Delta, Billy in Goshen, Indiana. And also, we'd like to welcome KB4GKI, Jimmy, up in Wilkes County. And also, the net is pleased to recognize KB4NET, Bill, down here in Waxhaw. Okay, tonight we're going to be training briefly on FirstNet. I suppose everybody have read something or heard about it in the past, and I figure tonight would be a good night to briefly go over what FirstNet is and how the amateur radio community how that falls along with the amateur radio community. Everybody knows about 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina. Those two incidences in the past really opened up everybody's eyes on there need to be improvement in the communication field for first responders. FirstNet is the first nationwide public safety broadband network to provide first responders in advance with advanced communications and to help them in technologies that they need to do their jobs safely and effectively. And the first responders rely on more than, right now, the first responders rely on more than 10,000 separate communication radio networks. This is across the country to communicate with each other during emergencies. That is a problem, and due to that, FirstNet was developed, which will do away with a lot of those different type of separate radio networks and put it all on one network. This network is going to be nationwide. It's interoperable. It's on, and it's just for the public safety community. This is WB4EMC for identifications. Okay, when life-threatening emergencies happen in remote areas, public safety could really benefit from having a network that has connections that enables the experts in medical support or in transportation to the hospitals. Also, FirstNet will carry high speed data, and that includes images and video that can help the emergency management, the EOCs, actually to see what is going on, and not even the EOCs. Let's say, for instance, if there was I'm just using this as an example here. Down here where I live, there is a major train track that runs through the community. Let's say if there was a train derailment and one of the boxcars was carrying chlorine, or actually a tanker carrying chlorine, and that tanker ruptures, okay? The first responders probably down here would probably be the police department. Well, with FirstNet, the police department can identify by the place card emblem on the side of the tanker what is inside that tanker, and then get on FirstNet, and immediately Hazmat will pick up on that since they'll be members of the FirstNet, and by the time they roll up, they won't have to identify what the chemical would be. They'd be ready with their hazmat suits and know exactly what needs to be done. That will definitely speed up the response time. This is WB4EMC. Public safety and first responders need to be able to communicate without interruption. It's also critical that our nation law enforcement officers, firefighters, and paramedics and responders have true priority for their daily and emergency communications need. This is another reason why FirstNet was developed, and it's going to be over the broadband network dedicated for public safety only. Also, FirstNet can be used for planned events like parades, concerts, festivals, sporting venues, and what have you. Again, they can use that on the whole network so that the police, fire, EMTs, and other first responders can see what's going on at one time. Okay, basically that's what FirstNet is, and I have looked up to see. Right now it's in the development stages. Not every state has it yet. More and more states coming on board daily. North Carolina is now in the process of getting FirstNet set up. Governor Cooper has implemented it, and AT&T was selected to work with the state of North Carolina to set up the FirstNet in the state. And AT&T is creating a totally new wireless system for public safety for the FirstNet. This will be set up on the existing AT&T LTE network. So, of course, this being new is going to have its problems. It's going to have its bugs. It's going to burp a few times. That is really expected. So, saying that, I know in the backside of everybody's mind is how will the amateur radio community work along with FirstNet? And another question I've heard from a lot of amateur radio operators, will the amateur radio group be able to participate in FirstNet? This is WB4EMC. Okay, first of all, let me start with the last question first. The amateur radio community will not be able to participate in FirstNet. I know everybody probably just sucked wind right there. But the amateur radio community will still be available to be part of the communication tool. Now, way FirstNet's going to be set up, it's more likely to be on a cellular system that can have internet capability. And we all know that can go down. And that's where we, as the amateur radio group, can step in when requested to provide information when needed. Okay, saying that, that's about all I have here on training. I just want to let everybody know that FirstNet is not designed to keep the amateur radio group out of doing emergency communications. That's not the case whatsoever. The emergency management still relies on the amateur radio group to provide them much needed information. Also being there in case if the regular communications infrastructure happens to break down. Okay, that's the training I have this evening, and let's see if we have any questions or comments about this. Let's go up to the top here to Whiskey 4 Oscar Papa Sierra, Mike in Florida. Good evening, Mike. Your comments or questions? Over.
Hey, good evening to you and everyone else on the net tonight listening in. This is my first time listening in, so I appreciate the reminder online that there's a net going on. And don't really have any comments or anything like that. What people have told me about FirstNet is unlike using amateur radio or two-way communications, it will actually be built on the cell phone broadband network. So it's built with AT&T, and just like a officer that has a cell phone will be able to pick it up and call another officer over the cell phone, but they got priority over the broadband system. And I believe that's off of like firstnet.com. I don't know if they have it implemented in Tennessee yet, but emergency communications has always been big. My brother is a police officer, and I've always been involved in emergency communications. So glad that you're talking about it, and it is something that is fairly new, and good to hear about it tonight. And other than that, I really don't have anything to add. There's still going to be a place for us because, I mean, anything that's connected to a cell tower or any kind of a wireless network that goes or anything like that, still bound to have failures and things still go wrong, unlike us that do wire-to-wire, radio-to-radio. So it'll be interesting to see how it progresses over the next 3 to 5 years. Back to you. This is W4OPS.
W4OPS, this is WB4EMC. Well, Mike, thank you for joining us this evening. And yes, FirstNet is new, and it's definitely going to have its bugs, you might say. And basically, if there's like a major incident and it happens to go down and they're trying to use it, we probably won't be able to send what they normally would like to send. I know on this FirstNet, they should be able to send like forms, pictures, what have you. And I know the amateur radio group can send forms, but it's not the type of forms they're going to be sending. Okay, and we probably can also send pictures, but you know, somebody has to have a camera set up and what have you. But the main purpose that the amateur radio community will be able to do is to be able to uh, contact or be the go-between from a responder to the EOC to let them know what's going on if it was a major incident. So, again, I know I've heard a lot when it first came about that FirstNet is doing away or pushing the amateur radio community aside in the case whatsoever.